All right, so in this video, we're going to play with triangular prisms. And actually, I'm going to turn this off, see if that helps. There we go. All right, so I found, like I told you the other day, there we go. When you're dealing with triangular prisms, they're kind of hard to find, a lot harder than I thought. And this is always my go-to because, well, it's chocolate. So we're going to play with this particular triangular prism today and take some measurements. But our first practice problem is, first, remind you, the formula for finding volume of any prism is still area of base, or capital B. Again, Ms. Reynolds doesn't like that, no big B's, but we can do capital B, area of the bottom of the shape, times the height. Or in this case, remember, because we're dealing with triangles, finding the area of a triangle, we talked about, is 1/2 times base times height. Then once you find the area of the triangle, then you're going to multiply that whole thing times the height of the shape. Now, a lot of times you're going to see the triangular prism drawn this way. Please do not be confused and think, oh, well, it's sitting on this rectangle part, so it must be a rectangular prism. No, no, no. It's got ends that are triangle. And remember, the triangles are directly opposite one another. So this becomes a triangular prism. It doesn't matter if it's seated this way, if it's turned this direction. Don't go look at the health ingredients on my chocolate here. If it's turned this direction, it doesn't matter, because it has two triangles that are directly opposite one another. We call this a triangular prism. Back to that rectangular prism. With the rectangular prism, you had two rectangular shapes that were opposite sides of each other, so that became a rectangular prism. Same rule applies with a triangular prism, and I did go find another one. I know, it's all based around food with Miss Reynolds. So this one also, triangular prism, and working to find what is my volume, or how much stuff could I put inside my triangular prism. All right, so again, back to your formula, and I'm going to say this multiple times. You know Miss Reynolds, she gets repetitive. That capital B means I have to find the area of the triangle first, because we've established this is a triangular prism, triangles on both sides. Then I can multiply it by how tall is it. So one of your homework problems, and in this case it was number 5, I sketched it up there for you. We talked about how it has a triangle on both ends, and I labeled it. Now please remind yourself, you have to put your labels. So remind yourself, this is a triangular prism. It has two triangles on both sides. They are opposite each other. I know, I know. And your formula you're going to use, area of the base, or the area of the triangle, times how tall is it, or its height. So remember, again, repetitive Miss Reynolds here, when you're finding the triangle, or the area of the triangle, you first want to do the formula for area of a triangle, or 1/2 base times height, just that little guy there. Then we'll deal with the rest of the shape. Okay? So I plugged it in for you. I know, secret math problem. So here we go. Volume equals 1/2 base times height. And you're plugging in. Remember, your half stays the same. It doesn't change. It's part of the formula. We talked about, how it's kind of like a tattoo. You're stuck with it once it's there. And I plugged in. What do I know about the triangle? I know it's 8 long, and it is 6 tall. So here's my triangle stuff in parentheses. Then times 18 inches tall. Yes, you can write this down as I'm talking about it. And then I multiply one step at a time. 1/2 of 8, or 1/2 times 8, is 4. Bring down the rest of my formula. Then next step, 6 times 4, or excuse me, 4 times 6 is 24. Bring down my times 18. And when we do our glorious, beautiful math, we know that 24 times 18 should give you 432. And in this case, these are inches. And remember, we talked about this is a three-dimensional shape, so it has to be cubed. Okay. We talked about before, way before spring break, why is the formula for a triangle, for the area of a triangle, half? Well, remember, when you have a triangle, ooh, that glare is terrible. There you go. When you have a triangle, you're saying, hey, that triangle is half of the area of a rectangle. And if you look, I kind of gave you an example. So I drew my triangle and I chopped off his sides because I originally started him off as a square. So I've chopped him off and I chopped off his little side pieces. And when you notice, if I fill that in, and I fill in half of my square, those chopped off pieces are the exact same size as the triangle. So I basically, I basically cut off half of the square. So a triangle, and that's why we use that formula back there, right there, 1/2 base times height. I'm really finding the area of the whole square, and then I'm throwing out that hot pink part because my triangle is only half. Okay, that was just your reminder. All right, so if we go and we look at our yummy Toblerone here, we're going to pull out the guts. Ooh, looky there. Now you know what Miss Reynolds is having for lunch later. And if you're just dying of curiosity, I went ahead and opened up a mini one. But if you look, it's kind of cool because the whole candy itself is triangular shaped, which is what makes it fun. All right, so looking at our Toblerone box and measuring it, we're going to estimate. So I'm going to do a little rounding here. And we're going to see that this guy, you know what? Probably should have left this in here. Here we go. Makes it a little easier to measure. All right. So when I go and I measure, I say, all right, here we go. My height, because remember, my triangles are on both ends. So my Toblerone candy, there we go. My Toblerone candy is about, that glare is just going to be the death of me. We're going to round it and call it about 8 inches tall. Okay, so it has a height of 8 inches. The triangles on the end is, his base is 1.5 inches. Yep, so his base is 1.5 inches and his height is 1.25. Okay, so when I go and I jot that down, and I remind myself, all right, first, Miss Reynolds says, please write the formula. So since we're dealing with a, what kind of shape? I know. I sit here and wait for you to answer. You're right, triangular prism. So I jot my formula down. 1/2 base times height, the triangle-y stuff, times how tall is my whole piece of chocolate. How much chocolate am I going to get to eat? So I go and I plug in my numbers. First step, there's my 1/2, stays change. We said the bottom of the triangle was 1.5 or 1 5/10 or 1.5 inches. And the height was 1.25 or 1.25 inches. Let me make this a little easier to read. Times 8 inches tall. I know, no panicking with all the decimal-y stuff. So there you go. Okay. So I multiply my decimals and my fraction. I could change that to 0.5 if that makes me happy. So let's do that so it doesn't look quite so intimidating. So we find 0.5 times 1.5 times 1.25 and then times that whole height of 8. So how much chocolate is Miss Reynolds going to eat? Well, you know what? I do love your multiplication. And I do require you in class to multiply. I'm not staring at you through the computer, although you probably think some days I am. So is it okay, oops, to whip this guy out? Am I going to complain? No. Because you know what my goal is while we're doing this online learning until I can see you face to face again? My goal is not, can you multiply decimals and fractions? That's already been a goal, and I know you can. So if we do a little shortcut math for now, and I plug in my half times my 1.5 times my 1 1/4, then I end up with decimal 9375. Okay, so I've got 0.9375 times, how tall did we say it was? We said 8. All right, so there's the first part. I know I just vanished into the darkness. Isn't that kind of cool? And then we're going to do times the height. And, ooh, looky there. My chocolate bar has a volume of 7.5 or 7.5 inches. Sounds like, a weird way to say, hey, we're going to eat 7.5 inches of chocolate. In volume, not how we speak, but that tells you that if I filled this up with something else, inch cubes that happen to be triangular shaped, then I would get 7.5 of them in there. All right. I want you to go and play with the rest of your homework. Yes, you can see where I chopped out my math problems. So go work now on the last 3 triangular prisms. And remember, I am here from 1 to 3 every day in the Zoom room. If you need to come and talk to me, I'm hanging out waiting for you to Zoom. Bye, guys.